Hello everyone, this is Dr. Meyer here with a video for you on extended chords. That is, adding additional thirds above the seventh of a chord in both the Western art and American jazz traditions. Let's get started. What is an extended chord? Okay, above the seventh of a chord, we can add additional thirds, resulting in a ninth, 11th, and 13th above the root of the chord. Adding this additional third on top of that would result in a 15th, which is just the root of the chord again. So 13th is as high as we go. In a 13th chord, we have all 7 diatonic pitches, every single note of the scale. That's all of them. Let's see an extended chord in the Western art tradition. Here's a piece called Adoration, composed by Florence Price. She uses 2 different extensions above the dominant, a 5/9 and a 5/11, in measures 26 and 30. Let's listen. Above the dominant of G major, so we have a D dominant here, the addition of an E gives us a 9th above the root in the string accompaniment. The addition of the G gives us an 11th above that D, also in the accompaniment. Both chord tones are in the upper voice of the accompaniment part and resolve downward in each of their respective resolutions, as extensions are prone to do. Let's learn some more details about these chords. Generally, the extensions in Western art are positioned above the dominant. However, as composers have moved into the 20th and 21st centuries, it has become more popular to add extensions on any diatonic scale root. These extensions are dictated by the key signature. So, above the dominant chord, we could have a major 9 in major mode. As you see here, those accidentals are just a courtesy. And we could have a minor 9th in minor mode, and same with the 13th, both affected by the key signature. So how do we know that that extension is in fact an extension and not just a non-chord tone? Well, the 7th of the chord must be present. The extension is usually the same duration as the other chord members around it, and it should hold a prominent registral position, usually the highest sounding pitch. Chords with extensions are almost always in root position because, as you recall, with all 7 diatonic notes possible, that third-based snowman would get pretty unruly in any other position other than root position. We're going to save our class time to talk about the other voice leading particulars, like how these extensions resolve. Hint, it's down, just like our 7th. And which chord tones to omit when writing these chords in a 4-part texture. For now, let's move on to the American jazz extensions. This musical genre also uses the 9th, 11th, and 13th above the root of the chord, but it's generally on any root, not just the dominant as we saw in Western art music. These chords can be found above 4 of the 5 7th chord types that we know, and are not just dominant 7ths. As with Western art chords, we expect the 7th of the chord to be included below the extensions that you find. A unique chord to jazz, though, is the minor major 7th chord. So that means we have a minor triad on the bottom with a major 7th above the root. Not something we see in Western art music. So unless it is specified by the chord symbol, however, a dominant 7th sounding chord is going to be built on any given root. So that's going to be your basis, is a dominant sounding chord. Alterations then are detailed very specifically by the chord's label with symbols from various traditions. So it can be a little frustrating that major can also be a triangle and not just MAG. So, MAJ. We need to sort of get used to different conventions meaning the same thing. That's what music theory is, right? The extensions of these chords then are assumed to come from the root's major scale, unless they are altered by the label. So what does this mean? We have an A flat major 7, 9, sharp 11 here. So we're going to need to start with the dominant sounding chord, dominant spelling, but that major 7 is throwing us off. So we need to change our G flat to G natural to accommodate that. The 9th, then the B flat just comes right from the A flat major scale, no problem. And sharp 11, we would have had D flat, right, from the key signature of A flat, but we need to raise it to D natural to accommodate that sharp 11. I'll promise we will practice more of these spellings soon. Let's, however, listen to a short example by Wayne Shorter's Pinocchio. You can see by the chord changes that there are 13th chords requested above each of the given roots. Have a listen. Here are the spellings of each of these chords from the chart in full, so on the top system, all of the chord tones, and then they've been reduced to a 5 or 4 note voicing in the bottom system. Feel free to pause the video now and sort of inspect each of these requested changes for their spellings and also for their alterations. Remember that most of these chords are going to be built on the roots major scale for the extensions. American jazz tradition also features what are called added chords. So if we do not have a 7th present, we could have what would appear to be an extension sort of voiced inside of the chord. And we're going to call that an added chord. So thus add 2 and add 6 are seemingly the same as a 9th and 13th chord, but there is no 7th present. Sus chords or suspension chords lack the 3rd of the chord, since the 3rd is going to be actually the resolution point of the suspension. And these can have a 7th or not, but sus just means there's no 3rd factor. Let me show you an example. Charlie Parker's Blues for Alice opens with an F6 or F add 6. The chart can say one or the other. Let's have a listen. Here are the spellings of those chords for these 3 measures. Again, with full spellings on the top as well as 4 note chords in the bottom system. That F6 is just an F triad with the 6th added on top of it and with no 7th present. Feel free to pause the video and check out the spelling of these chords. Lastly, here are a few helpful tips to help with the specifics of jazz extensions. Like in the example we just saw, the 6th versus the 13th rule here is applied because there is no 7th. The presence of that 7th distinguishes whether you've got an add 6 or a 13th chord. The 3rd of the chord is an important distinction between an 11th or a sus4. If it's there, if you have a 3rd, you have an 11th chord. If not, it's sus4. Finally, flat 5 versus sharp 11. This is because jazz sometimes uses enharmonic respellings, somewhat easier to read, but more difficult to spell. It can be really difficult to know exactly what chord you have. So for this one, if the 5th of the chord is there, that is that perfect 5th above the root in the key of the root, you can call it an 11th. because you're not going to have a chord with a regular and altered fifth at the same time. If it's not there, then you likely have flat 5. Your turn to practice. Let's listen to Fanny Hensel's Im Wald and see if you can identify the extended chord from the Western art tradition. Pause the video now if you need more time. This chord near the cadence is our chord of interest. You should have found this to be a 5-13 in A major. Notice that the 13th is sort of a longer duration. It's in the highest voice and it's also above a root position chord. Also, it resolves nicely down through scale degree 2 here. Let's have a little spelling test to see what you learned about jazz chord spellings. Spell an F major 7 flat 5 and an E flat 9 sus. Hint, if your label just says sus with no number referring to it, it's usually meaning sus 4 and not sus 2. Pause the video now as you work. The F major 7 flat 5 should feature a major 7th above F, which is E natural. It's going to be unlike the E flat we would find with our regular dominant spelling of the chord. It's also going to have a C flat for the lowered 5th of the chord. You could also spell this B natural, as I've shown in that first spelling, for ease of reading. And this is, in jazz, a very common thing to do. The E flat 9 sus is going to feature a 9th above E flat, according to E flat's key signature, so F. A 7th, in order for it to be an extended chord, we need to have that 7th, so D. We're going to remove the 3rd of the chord so that we can have that sus, and we're going to add sus 4, so A flat is existing in the E flat key signature. The B flat, which is the 5th of the chord here, is just for complete spelling. You could omit this in a 4-part texture, no problem. We have learned a lot about chords with extensions. Adding an extra 3rd above a 7th gives us a 9th, 11th, and a 13th above the root of the chord, and this can result in as many as 7 notes. In Western art music, these extensions are dictated by the key signature, whereas in jazz, the extensions are based on the root of the chord and then altered based on the chord symbol. Both are used to create color and interest, and both require special attention when spelling and identifying them properly. Good luck. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.